In the previous episode, we discussed the process of making a decision. But making a decision is only half the battle for a good manager. The second half is getting the decision implemented. In this episode, we cover how the good manager gets and keeps their staff on board with the decision. Hi, I'm Rick Kendall.
And I'm Fred Ball.
Welcome to Management Mastery. The purpose of these podcasts is to share what each of us has learned about good and bad management in our combined over 40 years of experience, both as managers and executive coaches. During that time, we've coached managers at every level in companies from Fortune 100s to brand new startups in all major businesses, including nonprofits, government, and education. So whether you're just starting in your first management position or are an experienced manager looking to strengthen your management skills, we know our podcast will be valuable to you. Superior managers balance a people-oriented personal style with the ability to take charge, to be purposeful, assertive, and businesslike. So when you've arrived at a decision, it's important to hold a meeting with your staff to explain the decision clearly and simply, and include the reasons why it was made. And it's important that you allow questions while showing respect to a staff member who may have a difference of opinion. I worked with a person who had a manager who oftentimes was very unsure of themselves when they made a decision, and wouldn't allow the staff, I shouldn't say wouldn't allow, that if you ask a question just to try to understand why he wanted this decision implemented, he would push back. You weren't questioning the decision, you just wanted more information to understand it, but he wouldn't even tolerate that. And so often, the decision wasn't properly implemented because the manager couldn't get a clear idea of what exactly the decision was. So after a discussion, remind the team that your decision has been made and that you're moving forward and you need everyone on board, but make sure everyone understands clearly the reason behind the decision.
Then there's going to be some behaviors that you need to exhibit during the process. You need to be prepared to help staff that are confused until the new direction sinks in. You need to be empathetic and intuitive when someone's having difficulty and willing to help in any way necessary. You want to be positive, outgoing, and patient, encourage staff through the tough times, and basically have people's back. Understand that you will be communicating the new decision many times. And if a staff member is moving to undercut your decision, call the person in and put a stop to it. I had a coaching case recently where the prior manager was very much do as I say. I'm not going to set goals. I will come in and tell you I need this by the end of the week, or I need that within 2 or 3 days. And the new manager came in and he was trying to get people to begin to think for themselves. And so he was willing to say, look, the goals are going to be set by the organization, but the methodology that you use, you will definitely select. It was very difficult for some long-term staff members to understand this because they had worked for such a period of time for the former boss. And so what happened is that it required all of these behaviors on the part of the person that I was coaching in order to be patient and to be positive and to work with people. And there were a couple of people who he had to also call in and say, you need to put a stop to your behavior or we're going to have a great difficulty.
Well, I think that points out, Fred, the importance of when you've announced the decision or arrived at the decision that you want to set short-term goals for the implementation against that decision, so that people don't have to swallow so much at once, as it were. And you also have to be, well, and you want to assess progress in those intervals, so that you've divided it up into easy to implement steps. And you want to make tactical changes as you need. Remember, you're now doing things differently, so changes can happen. Things that are unexpected can happen. And it's important to be able to balance consistency, that is, you want to stay consistent with the decision you've made, but also be flexible enough to adapt if the situation changes. And you want to also, again, be sure whenever there's a change in direction to discuss it with the staff and explain it to them, take questions, make sure everyone understands and is on board. A lot of times the pushback comes when somebody just doesn't understand what the decision was. And you need to manage your progress consistently and against the timeline that you've either set up yourself or been assigned by your boss.
I've had a coaching situation where an executive in the nonprofit area was trying to get board members to agree on a 5-year strategy, and they had to do exactly with what Rick was talking about setting short-term goals. They would spend time meeting with, first of all, the most involved of the board of the nonprofit, getting them on board, and then moving using the short-term goal strategy to reach out to other people. And eventually, once they got to the full board meeting, they were able to agree on the 5-year strategy. So then what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to evaluate the decision. And this comes down to 2 areas: a process evaluation and a content evaluation. Let's talk process evaluation first. You want to ask yourself some questions. Did the decision-making process proceed as you planned? What went well? What didn't go well? And what changes need to be made the next time?
Yeah, it's important to get a good sense of what can be replicated in the future, so you don't have to go back to square one every time. So if there were problems, what caused them, how can you avoid them? And have you provided some real-time leadership training to your staff and assess the leadership capacity of people in your group? I mean, implementing a decision, especially if there are changes and unexpected issues, is a good testing and training ground for staff. You can see who rises to the occasion, shows good judgment, knows how to evaluate a problem and come up with possible solutions. So it's a good way to evaluate your staff.
I had a situation where I was coaching someone who was a senior person in the education field, and this is not going to sound strange to many people, but due to changing student needs, the school district needed to change the schools that students attended. And as you know, that can be something that raises the ire of many parents who are, in fact, your clients. But what happened is there were so many steps in that process, and they were documented so clearly that what they were trying to do is what Rick was talking about, what can be replicated in the future. So by keeping careful records on the process that they went through, they knew that if they came up with that situation again, they would have a way that they could approach it.
Well, and keeping that kind of data is so critical. I mean, first of all, to be able to show that you successfully implemented against whatever the decision, was, and boy, I think anybody who's a parent with school-age children has been through some version of redrawing the boundaries of a school area. But regardless of how well or poorly things went, what you want to be able to assess what could be done better the next time. You always want to be looking at what could I have done differently that would have made the process run more smoothly. What lessons have I learned in implementing this decision?
And they should be written down and put in the same file where you're going to save the steps that if you ever had to do it again. Then the second part is content evaluation. Is your solution working? Are you getting the right results that you wanted? If not, why not? And what changes need to be made? Are you sticking to the schedule? If not, why not? What can be speeded up or eliminated? What is holding up progress? And you have to remember that you may hear what could be eliminated may be coming from your frontline workers, those people that are actually on the job doing the work, and they may find some things that you really don't need. And we talked about, are there opportunities for immediate improvement, and at what you'd have to look at what cost in either dollars or time. And as Rick was talking about before, what data do you need to prove your success? Regardless of how well or poorly things went, what can be done to improve the performance the next time?
You know, staff appreciate a manager who can make a decision and take action and stick to the plan. Everybody wants to know what's expected of them and what they have to do. And they want a clear direction. So, you know, they need clarity, and that allows them to move more quickly, efficiently, and consistently. So the direction should be rational, and there should be very little ambiguity. Now, sometimes there has to be. You can't be overly rigid, but you want to be consistent, and if you're changing something, you want to explain why. I think we all saw an example of this during the COVID crisis, where as new information was developed, changes had to be made, and the changes weren't always explained to people in a way that they could go along with the change. So clarity in communication when there needs to be change is critical. And the plan should be able to move forward while making adjustments as necessary.
If things get tough, you want a boss that will have your back as well.
So what do you do if conditions do change? And this happens. We've sort of alluded to it already. But if fundamental changes happen where the decision that was made really isn't operative anymore, well, the first thing you want to do is to revisit the initial steps you took. How did you get to the decision you'd made? And what of those need to be changed given the new conditions? You want to just evaluate the impact those changes have on the decision you've already made. And then you make the adjustments that you think are necessary, but you want to keep your staff and your boss in the loop so they understand why you're making the changes, you understand the reason for it, and they're all on board. And again, tolerate questions, explain things clearly so that everybody understands.
When we have been involved in coaching anyone who's an executive in the government field, these kinds of things come up. Flexible, adaptable, you need a lot of skills to be successful in the area. All you have to do is look at the newspaper any day and see what's going on in the government and how many changes often have to be made in order to come to a final decision resolution.
In this episode, we discussed the process for implementing on the decision or decisions you've made. We covered the importance of having your staff on board with your decision and how to ensure that. In that regard, we discussed making sure that the staff feel they've had meaningful input in the process and clearly understand why the decision was made. We also talked about the importance of making sure everyone sticks to the plan once a decision is made. If modifications are needed, be sure to explain and discuss with your staff. We hope you have found this podcast useful and will come back again for more Management Mastery. If you have any comments about this or any of our episodes, or would like to find out more about our other services, including one-on-one coaching and group seminars for managers, visit our website at careercoachclass.com. Thanks for listening.